Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the iRacing Today radio show for today, which is February the 3rd, 2015. Welcome to February, ladies and gentlemen. It has finally arrived. You're sitting there saying, when will this January end? Well, it did, because it's February now, so it's time to start looking at Valentine's Day gifts and making sure that you don't mess that all up, or doing some racing, whatever suits your fancy. My name is Trevor Cameron. I am the host of this wonderful program, and beside me I have the blind Mr. Chad Dalton. How you doing today, Chad?
I'm doing good.
Going sans glasses tonight, so he cannot see what's going on. It's okay. I'm Canadian.
But I can hear it.
Stupid French accent. But anyway, this is the show of shows, and it is the 85th show of the iRacing Today radio show. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Really appreciate it. And thanks for everything. Thanks for being you. You know, that about sums it up, doesn't it?
Don't be anybody else because they're already taken.
Ooh, I like it. And if you ever get sad, stop being sad and be awesome instead.
Well, I think that's a pretty good show for tonight.
Well, we have a special edition sort of show. We've changed the show record night to Tuesday night, so in case you missed that and you're not watching live tonight and you're listening on your podcast saying, holy crap, what's this show doing showing up in my podcast feed already? Well, it's because it's Tuesday, and we've changed our recording night to Tuesdays because, well, we decided to do that, and this is the first week that we're going to be doing that. So that happened, but it's also a special edition because there's really not a lot to talk about, but there's so much to talk about. Mostly this week's show is just going to be all about what happened this weekend with the iRacing Daytona, or the iRacing 24 at Daytona. I kept changing hashtags in the middle of the show. It was either the iRacing 24, the iRacing Daytona 24,
And
Daytona
you still forget the
iRacing
.com.
24. Yeah, but not in a hashtag. You don't need it. I mean, you only get 140 characters, man. You know,
It's four little bitty things.
Yep.
.co.
Out of 140, man, like that's like almost 4% now. Well, it's about 2%, give or take 2.5% of the characters you're allotted for .com, which is implied. So, but most of this week we're going to talk about that wonderful experience, and there's a lot to talk about there, and we'll talk a little bit about Chad's race that he decided. He said, you know what, we're going to race for 24 hours, but that's not enough for me. I'm going to go tackle Bathurst the night before, and and see how that works out, and then go to bed for a couple minutes, and then wake up and race for 24 hours. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And, of course, we have our poll question, which is a bit of a quick hitter, so we'll talk about that right quick like. So, should be, I feel we should have like a trademark or the, patent pending on the it should be a quick show, iRacing Today radio show version, the, hey, yeah, we're only going to keep you for a short period of time show and then completely lie. But that's the gut feeling I have. That's how I'm feeling. So, moving into it, hey, there was a big race this weekend, and it went well. We were happy with the results. And, yeah, that about sums that up. So,
Wow. Really is going to be short.
But if anybody anybody's aware with the iRacing stuff, they had their big, huge first official 24-hour race this weekend. We had the test result, or the test race happened a couple weeks ago that we mentioned about. But this was the first. That was the, let's see if there's any bugs. Okay, there's a couple bugs. And this was for realsies. So it happened, and as far as I understand, pretty much without a glitch. I mean, it was Tim had a period of time where he couldn't get into the server for a little bit. There's a couple little things here and there, but Other than
There,
that, you know.
there was also weird glitches with the mute button
Oh
that
yeah.
I never could figure it out. For some reason, uh, like obviously we have a overall mute button and we have an individual mute button, and at least with us, if you wanted to individually mute a certain person, it would not do it, and then in my case, it would mute somebody else entirely different. So I know that I was trying to mute somebody in my first stint, and wouldn't let me do it. Didn't even register that I was clicking the button. I was pushing it like 400 times. Couldn't even do it. And then suddenly another car that hadn't even spoken in the race yet to that point started talking, and he was muted. And I don't know why, because I never told it to mute him. And for the rest of the race, that car was muted. For me, I never ever heard them speak.
Poor person. They're probably thinking, why does Chad hate me so much? I keep saying, hey, Chad, I'm a big fan of the radio show. I'm so excited to be racing with you, man. Why won't you answer me, Chad? You're not like you are on the show at all. You say you like your listeners and you want to race with people, but you're a jerk. I'm never listening to your show again. That's probably what's happening. That's my
Yeah,
guess.
I'm sure. So yeah, there was that. Hopefully they'll get that fixed up. And Trevor actually had an interesting point for the record
Ooh, I was
that
due.
do what?
I was due.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I get at least once a month that I'm allowed to have an interesting
yeah.
point.
But he did kind of have an interesting thought at the least about what might have been happening. But I don't. I mean, who knows? It could just be a weird glitch that is easily fixed. But Trevor, I think you mentioned something like you wondered if all of our different setups with our cockpits and everything might be triggering things like the mute button to not work successfully.
Yeah, because I mean we're all using the same car and it all has the same settings in it for all the ABS and the pit limiter and all that stuff. I was wondering if maybe somehow we were each trying to tweak each other's radio somehow, and it got really confused as to how to handle that. That was my theory. I have nothing to base that on other than pure speculation, but who knows? Also, when I was out of the car, my mute all button, because when I was doing the stream stuff, I didn't want to have the driver chat up because full screen it doesn't pop up the little window saying who's talking. So I thought that would just be distracting if you could hear people but had no idea what car was actually talking. So I muted that, but if I was out there, I couldn't actually unmute it. Like it was like the button wasn't mapped. And I know in a normal server, I can do that even when I'm out of the car, but it didn't let me do it until I actually got in the car. Then it allowed me to turn the driver chat on because I tried to, I turned it on when I was in the car just in case somebody was saying something I needed to pay attention to, kind of thing. So there was that little weird thing, like I said, and then Tim got out of the server and he couldn't get back in for he was trying for a good hour and a half or whatever. So good thing he didn't try
And that
just
was
before a
strange
stint.
too. That was strange too because he had been in the server for forever
Hmm.
and he had just finished his stint and was watching the next guy, and then he said something like he was just gonna leave and go do something, and then he came back, tried to come back in, and
Oh,
it wouldn't connect him.
actually, no, he actually got kicked out. Like his quality spiked right up, and it booted him. Like he didn't leave voluntarily at that time, so his quality went burp. It booted him, and then it would never let him back in for like the next hour and a half. So that
Oh,
might just be. Well, actually, I don't know what that might just be, but little weird things here and there. But overall, for their first real go at a 24-hour race, I think it was pretty impressive that they got it done and everything worked. I'm impressed my computer didn't catch on fire for streaming, running a game for 24 hours and streaming it. Everything worked quite fine. Although I did run into a glitch where I was, because it saves replay information, I actually ran out of hard drive space in the stream. The stream actually did stop at one point in time, although it seemed to stop just as I came down to check on it. So I caught it in time and just had to kind of delete some stuff and reset it, and it worked fine. So we didn't miss anything. We were actually in the pits getting repairs at the time that happened, so we didn't miss anything. But I never thought about that.
spoiler!
I never thought about that when it was sitting there spooling. It's like, oh
Yeah.
wait, it's just eating my hard drive up. Oh crap! I never thought about that. So But it was, like I said, it was an impressive feat. I don't think that's something that's happened much in the racing sim world. Couple stats here before we get into our actual performance. Apparently, there was 1,860 drivers took place in the event, split over 409 teams. With everybody involved, there were over 230,000 laps turned. There were 4,385 driver swaps took place, and several people, two that I know for sure, and then apparently there were others, but two people we know specifically actually completed the entire 24 hours solo. Now, the rules stated that you had to have at least two drivers in, so when the checkered flag came down, they were instantly disqualified because they didn't meet the criteria, but they still did the entire 24 hours by themselves. And that is a little bit ridiculous. Probably not entirely safe, but still rather, like I said, it's impressive that that actually happened. Would you not say so?
I know of a lot of people that tried it. Some people ended up getting in incidents and stuff, so they didn't quite complete all the laps because they were in the pits for a long time and they went several laps down, but they still completed the whole 24 hours, just not lap wise. So yeah, I don't know that I recommend that one.
Really? Because as soon as I saw that, like my first thought was, why didn't I think of that? So I mean, maybe we just come on two different planes when it comes to video gaming. But actually,
Yeah, I would.
I brought up the list here. There was actually two drivers that basically completed it, and that was Ian Plash or Plassage. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, Ian. He was in the HPD and he completed 786 laps with only 24 incident points. That's pretty bloody impressive right there. And Jacob Klein, who we've mentioned many times before, and I believe we've interviewed him on the show before, have we not?
No,
I thought we did. Weren't we going to?
no, no.
All right.
We've just raced a lot with him.
Well, Jacob, who runs the IRL, who we talk about a bunch anyway.
No, you're not even
What?
a
No.
totally different person. Jacob Fife is the one
Oh,
who runs the
wait.
IRL.
Jacob, right. Jacob,
Jacob Klein is who we raced with in Short Track Pro Cup.
right. Wow. Brain fart.
See,
Did we interview
this is
Jacob
why
Fife on the show?
No, we did five. Yes.
Okay, so I'm not insane. So we did interview a
No,
Jacob.
you are insane because you're totally on the wrong Jacob.
But I know, at least I realized that we did interview a Jacob. So I'm not just making that up in my head.
Trust me, Jacob Klein, very different person from Jacob Fife.
I know. Now that you told me that we knew him from SDPC, now I remember who he was. But I kept reading that and I swore it was Jacob Fife. That's who I pictured had done this. Wow. All right. So apparently Jacob Klein, not Jacob Fife, who runs the IRL, who we've interviewed on the show and know. Anyway, Jacob Klein raced the McLaren and he did 756 laps, only like 30 laps less than the HPD. So he was out there and he basically raced the whole race. Now it makes more sense that it was Jacob Klein. Now that think Jacob Fife didn't make sense. Klein does that he would do this. And had 60 incident points. There were also several that tried and didn't make it the whole way, or at least spent a large amount of time in pit road. Matthew O'Donnell did 650 laps in the HPD. Jim Placilla was in the BMW. He did 428 laps. Nathan Sylvia was in the HPD, did 552 laps. And Matt Pabon was in the rough, and he did 200 laps, so I guess something went horribly wrong for poor Matt in his race. But
He went really, really, really slow.
I gotta pace myself. I'm already tired. Oh, what am I doing?
Okay, I got up to 3 miles an hour this lap. Let's see if I can go for a 4 on the next one.
So that, like I said, I mean, we do not endorse that. We do not say that you should do that. But it's still pretty bloody impressive. The gamer in me says, Well done, people. Well done.
The mature adult in me says you guys are not safe, and that is a serious health issue that could potentially arise.
So why is it the old guy who think this is cool, and the young guy is all like, "Man, it's a safety issue. You got to take care of your bodies and stuff." It should be opposite. Like, is this opposite day?
No, because I'm a smart young boy.
Well, what does that say?
I
What does that say for the fact that I'm going to be doing my 24-hour gaming marathon in July to help the children? Now, mind you, that's not
Yep.
racing a car, so I'm going to be getting up and I'm going to be,
Yeah, you're going to be getting up and going to the bathroom. That is a totally different scenario. This is just sitting at your computer for 24 hours in a row. That could cause blood clots.
what?
That that could cause your brain to go into some kind of I want to blow up mode.
I want to blow up mode.
I don't know what it
Your
would be.
brain just, oh crap, that's it, I'm out.
I mean, yeah, while there is a part of me that thinks, wow, that's kind of cool that they completed 24 hours because there are some teams who had 5, 6 people that did not complete the 24 hours. And so it's like, wow, one person beat 5 people out. But at the same time, uh, yeah, no.
Well, I'm sure they didn't sit there for 24 hours. I mean, I'm guessing when they went in for the pit stops, they went to use the washroom and then, came and sat down. So maybe they had slightly longer pit stops than anybody else. Maybe they had a bucket. I don't know what happened. I
Well,
don't
if you
want to know
complete
what
the
happened.
750 laps, you complete most of the race.
That is true. That is true. Yeah, because
Because I think you could only do just shy of 800.
yeah, well, our race, the total laps was 834. Was completed by the race leader. So yeah, you're right. But I mean, that doesn't mean you can't take an extra 2 minutes to go and use the washroom and a pit stop, or just have maybe your computer's right beside the bathroom. I mean, it takes bloody well 45, 50 seconds to do a pit stop in that thing
Maybe
anyway.
maybe your computer is in the bathroom and you're really racing from the toilet.
Just have a fridge there, just sitting on the
Yeah.
toilet, just the natural flow of fluids.
All right, I've used the bathroom, and
Mute,
now I'm gonna get out a sandwich and start making my. Oh, got to shift down here.
mute team speak. I'm making a sandwich on the side.
Yeah. But
But
okay, so like, yeah, it is a pretty cool accomplishment, but at the same time, I please just get team members next time.
won't somebody think of the children? Yeah. Although I'm guessing that it wasn't so much about the we couldn't find teammates. It was a matter of, hey,
Yeah,
this is a crazy thing. Let's do this. Is what I'm guessing.
12-hour race, like the 12 hours of Sebring, totally could see that because
Yeah,
it's not near as long, but 24 hours is a bit over the top.
you're right. That's what we should do. We should split up all the people that we have to do that race into two-man teams so that we can cover the entire split. I like it.
Yeah,
Just,
two
just,
by two by two,
just two
like
on,
Noah's
two
Ark.
off, two on, two off, two on. Yep, we could do this. I mean, I
Yeah,
pity the fool who gets saddled with me, but that's not the point.
I'm not gonna be with you. Actually, that would be a good idea. You could put two, because if the minimum for that race is going to be two, which I'm
hmm
assuming it will be, because that's what it was for Daytona,
Yep.
then why why not just have one guy race for 2 hours, then put in the next guy, let him race for 2 hours, have the first guy come back for a couple hours, and have the next guy for a couple hours, and just keep rotating it until you got to your 12 hours. You could do it,
Yeah,
and
that
you'd
doesn't
only need two
seem.
of you.
Yeah, that doesn't seem unusual or that bad at all.
Yeah,
And like I said, the more people we have, because we have a lot of people that between us and the listener team and whatnot, we could like blanket that split. A lot of our I ratings are all pretty similar, so that would be so cool. There'd be like six podcast dragon teams in the split. Let's
oh
see,
my gosh, they're everywhere.
let's see, six out of like say 36, whatever, like a full 1/6 of the cars racing around there are orange and green podcast dragons. That
Yeah,
would be awesome. That would make for some good TV. Yeah.
I think we should try that.
Then we could just be confusing everybody. It's like, man, didn't that car just pass me? Wait, I just passed him. Why is it? I don't know what's happening anymore.
There's six of them. Ah, run!
Every time I turn around, it's a podcast dragon.
But speaking of podcast dragons, our own personal performances
Yes,
uh, involved more than just us racing.
absolutely.
Um, so we had this goal and desire to get our team, the iRacing Day Motorsports slash Hensley Motorsports Enduro team, as we named it,
Hmm.
and then of course the iRacing Day Radio Show team, which you mentioned last week, was going to be racing. And of course I did, and of course we did. And our goal was to be in the same split. And we had a pretty good idea that we were going to be able to work that out, but we weren't 100% sure. Um, I think it was Dean that figured out that the first two people who start off the race is where it grabs the I rating from. So it doesn't just do an average of your entire team, which actually makes sense because if you think about it, the iRacing Day Radio Show team has like 26 people on it. And
Yeah.
if it took an average of everybody on there, and most of those people weren't even racing, that would be a little unrealistic. So um, Roy Clark started out for the show team, and of course I started out for our team. And he and I have fairly similar I ratings. I think his I rating is like 1315, and mine is 1525. So we're pretty close. Um, so we felt good about being in the same split, but we weren't sure. And then, of course, the first thing that I did, at least, once the room fired off Saturday morning, was look at the entries. And we were car 77, they were car 76. So I knew that provided we got those numbers, it'd be very easy to see if we were in the same split, and come to find out, as most of you already know, we were in the same split.
Yes, which
So,
was very cool. Now, and the thing is that there's some controversy swirling around the forums about how that was not the way that people wanted the splits to be happening. Because apparently, the claim is that people were manipulating the system in order to get themselves into lower splits than they should have, and therefore giving themselves a better chance to win. So I guess on the surface, we kind of did that to a degree. Like, we manipulated the system as we understood it in order to try to get into the same split. We did it for a completely different reason. I mean,
but
we did it because the way we did it because we wanted to be in the same split with the listener team. Although, quite frankly, we had already decided who was going to
yeah,
start
we
both
didn't.
races before we even knew
Yeah,
that.
I don't even think we even manipulated because I was picked to start the race 2 weeks before the race even started. So
True.
it was like the show team hadn't even come together by that time. And then I think a lot of the reason why they put Roy first is because Roy's in Australia, and it was way different time for him, and probably maybe a more convenient time than most people on his team. I don't know this, but I'm just saying it. Um, but I don't even think that we manipulated it, but it could be viewed that way. But
Right.
so it was really cool that we ended up in the same split because it made everything that we were trying to accomplish with having the same paint schemes and kind of being sister teams. It made all that much cooler.
Right.
And so that was the first yay moment of our entire Saturday. Um, Now, the race for us started off much better than I actually thought it was going to because I was worried, personally, that our qualifying time was not going to be good enough to start us near the front of the field in GT class, that is.
Right.
And I really wanted to start at the front of the GT field and
Yeah.
not, it didn't.
You didn't want to be in the middle of that maelstrom, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it worked out perfectly in the Roar before the 24 because we ended up on GT pole. So, and I liked that because it kind of allowed me to be in my own world because all the HPDs drove away from us, and a lot of the GT cars either started from the pits or didn't get a good start or wrecked. So it was like, okay, I really want to do that in this race. Well, and I kept worrying and kept worrying and kept worrying that it wasn't going to happen. And then we got into the room, and lo and behold, I was starting in second in GT class, which really surprised me. But I guess it's because we ended up in a low enough split, and everybody ahead of us in qualifying was in a higher split or a lower split than us because we were not in the lowest split, believe it or not.
No, there
Um,
were
10
10
splits,
splits, and we
and we
were
were
in the
ninth.
ninth. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I memorize these things.
Well,
I had to because I can't see.
well, I know, but I have the right here. I was, it's like, oh, here's an opportunity for me to jump in and give some information. And no, no, Chad's all like, shut up, Trevor. I know this.
Yep. Yeah, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing.
That'll come up a little later on. So that was really good for me personally. I don't. Larry and Trevor and all them didn't really care where we started because by the time they get in the car, it doesn't matter. But for me, being the guy that starts the race, I wanted to start as close to the front of that field as possible. So we started in second. The show car, I think, started in seventh in GT class.
Am I allowed to check?
Uh,
Or do you have that memorized?
I don't know. You can double check my work. How about that?
They started in, oh man, they started in 20th overall.
Yeah.
So I guess it doesn't say where they started in class. Well, this is dumb.
Well, go to where I started and then count backwards.
Wait, hold on. If I just go over to GT3 class, well, no, it just
See,
says
this is
start
why you
20th.
memorize things, people, because when you have to sit there and look it up, it takes way too long. And
It's,
then it,
I don't think that's true at all.
I mean, here we are. You've been doing this for 35 seconds now.
Well, if you start at second, they must have started seventh because they started 5 positions behind us.
Okay,
There.
so there we
Happy?
go. I was right. Um, so, which was good, though, that they started in seventh. So that put them, towards the front of the field as well. So, the race started off pretty well for both of us. There were a couple of very early incidents. One actually right in the first turn that was really kind of dumb. And then there was another one that was in the second turn in that first horseshoe, which I had to avoid a little bit, but it wasn't too difficult. And the show team had to avoid more,
Hmm.
but they got through it. And so, in the end, the first few laps of both of our races were probably a little hectic at times, especially for the show team since they were a little bit further back than us. But it was pretty smooth sailing right out of the gate, which is what you would like to have.
Well, yeah, because it was perfect. Like you said, you start in second. I mean, like that's the perfect scenario starting at the front of the class because, as long as you get away clean, the
Yeah,
HBD should just run away from you. So you should just be in this world of your own and,
yeah,
without any hassle, which is kind of what happened, which is great.
yeah. And that's what I wanted to have. It makes it easier at the start. So we actually ended up with our team in particular for the first 7 or 8 laps. We actually ended up in the GT lead because the guy that won the GT pole, I don't think ever gridded. At least he didn't grid. He just started from the pits.
Good grid.
Um, grid. But because I don't remember ever seeing him, so then I kind of became the pole sitter, so to speak. Because if you don't know on iRacing, the real pole sitter, if he chooses to start from the pits or for some reason doesn't end up making the grid at all, um, then the second place car technically inherits the pole in a road course situation where the inside lane is where second place is. So I basically inherited the pole in a way, even though I didn't. So, like I said, we led the first 7 or 8 laps, and things were going really well. And at this point, I'm not kidding you guys. I was nowhere near as fast as I could have been. I was seriously just pacing. Actually, my entire strategy for my first stint was to run the first fuel run. About half of it was going to be just at a nice, solid, let's get this thing started pace. And then about the second half of that first fuel run, I was going to pick up the pace a little bit because by then I figured most of this would be pretty spread out and settled in. I wouldn't really be around people for the most part. So I figured, by then I could pick up the pace a little bit. And then my plan was to pit, and then after that pit stop, when I had new tires and everything was fresh again, really go hardcore as fast as I can for that entire run until I gave the car to Trevor.
Right.
And that was my goal. But I guess you should never plan things out because plans change.
Best plans of mice and men.
And unfortunately, our plans changed very early on. It was about lap 8 or 9, somewhere in there. It's only about 10 to 15 minutes into the race.
Yep.
I went into the second horseshoe, the one of the last little parts there when you're in the infield, and I felt like I went in there the same way I had been going in there, and got run over by a McLaren for really no reason. And that kind of shot me. It didn't spin me out, but it kind of shot me into the grass, and I kind of diagonally went into that turn, came back out onto the road, and really everything was kind of fine, despite being hit and going through the grass. But then the same car that hit me kept going instead of checking up and kind of being like, oh shoot, he could be spinning, and ended up almost beating me to the spot. And because they got there at the same time that I got there, and because I was still kind of out of control, I ended up sliding into them. And it tore up the entire left front of our car because of the angle that I happened to hit him. And I ended up in the, uh, with the little meatball flag, as we like to call it, which I guess is its official name, but I don't know.
Which was ridiculous because I mean, looking back at because I went back and looked at the the contact, like it was not that severe of a contact. Like there's no way it should have. Like it just destroyed the corner of the car. Like it was ridiculous the amount of damage you got from that contact.
Yeah, I mean it felt pretty hard from my side, but it still as tough as that car is supposed to be, it did surprise me that it was that much. Like I've actually been in races in like the truck, for example, or the cup car, where I've been in a pretty severe crash where I've actually spun, hit the wall, or hit another car, and I've ended up with 3 or 4 minutes of required repairs. And I know it's different in endurance racing, but and it's like, well, that's only 3 or 4 minutes, and this was eight, almost. It was just shy of 9 minutes in total between the required and the optional. The optional was 25 seconds. The required was 8:20 ish, I think. So it's
It's
like,
it's like we're gonna replace this entire
yeah,
suspension area of the thing, and then we're just gonna kind of casually push down on the fender for like 25 seconds and then let you go.
yeah, and that's what it was. Eight minutes of it, the required was fixing something underneath the car, and the other 25 seconds was the part that was all bent up. And like as soon as the 25-second optional started, that just slowly started going down. And I was like, really? That's the 25 seconds. Um, so that put us behind right out of the gate, which was not cool, especially considering that we were in the GT lead at the time and I was just pacing myself. Now, Roy Clark, who was racing the show team, actually told me after my stint was over with, and of course his stint was over with, because he started, I mentioned, he asked what had happened because he saw me kind of go off in the grass, and then obviously later saw us way behind in the standings. And, I kind of told him, and he said something that I agree with, but at the same time, in this particular situation, I don't know that it applies. And what he said was, in that moment, I probably should have just let him go because he seemed to be very aggressive and obviously wanted to lead. And I agree with that because there are times when people are that way and you should just let them go because it's like,
Mhm.
okay, you just go play. I'll be here at the end of the race when you're not.
Yeah, this is
Um,
obviously more important to you at this point in time. So
yeah,
carry on, sir.
23 hours from now, it'll be more important to me. Um, and I agree with Roy on that, and that is a good tip for the record for any of you guys that might be new. There are cases where you should just let people go because it's not worth holding them up. But in this case, this McLaren had not one time in the first 8 laps made an attempt to pass me. and he had really never truly caught me. He got one time within about 3 car lengths, which to me is, I mean, I know it's a little different on a road course than it is on an oval, but 3 car lengths is not catching me necessarily. And so in my eyes, he never really got there.
Right. He never
So
indicated that he was, like he wasn't diving in each corner and making it look like he was trying to set up a pass. He was just kind of
yeah,
going there and sort of, on your bumper, but not making moves. And then all of a sudden, just didn't break for that corner. Yeah.
yeah. And so that's why I didn't let him go. Because if he'd have tried to pass me, I'd have just let him go. Because there's no point in me racing him on minute 10 of a 24-hour race. But so I mean, but he never made an attempt to pass me, and even then he didn't make an attempt to pass me. He just ran into the back of me. So I don't really see where that would apply in that situation. But nonetheless, it set us backwards.
True. Now, and to be fair, I mean, during the rest of the race, I don't believe I ever saw that car really acting in an overly aggressive manner. So
Well,
to give them the
they did
benefit
wreck
of the,
somebody else.
oh yeah, right, they did too, didn't they?
Yeah,
Never mind.
they
Belay that.
actually wrecked the third place car later in the race. Um, which did actually help the show team in the end. But it still they wrecked somebody else,
All
and it
right.
was kind of a similar wreck.
Yeah, I was going to say I was going to give them the benefit of the doubt and just say that they were, first few lap jitters and missed their breaking point. But yeah, I forgot they took out the third place car. I mean, took out is extreme. They made contact with and ended up severely damaging another car.
Yeah,
So,
and but it was actually very similar to the way that they took us out. At least that was according to Tim. I never actually saw it, but just in listening to Tim, he said it seemed very similar. But anyways, we can put all that aside. So after I got the damage fixed, got back out on the racetrack, I'll let Trevor kind of comment on this because he will probably say it better. But I became focused.
yes, we had the return of Angry Chad, or
Dalton 2.0.
yeah, angry focused Chad, because it's if you've been listening to the show for a long, long time. I mean, we mentioned the one time in that league race, that league versus league race, where Chad just went into it went into Chad mode, and like he just stopped talking, and then all of a sudden, like once the repairs were done, he went out there, and then he just started passing everything that was
Yeah.
out there. Like he just like there was no talk, there was no conversation, there was no nothing. He was just like set it up, pass it, set it up, pass it, set it up, pass it.
And then the one that was probably the most impressive is that I passed somebody in the grass. Which, if you've ever driven in the grass on iRacing, it's not the most easy thing.
No, and especially in these cars, like there is like no grip in the like I. When we'll get to it, but I got in the grass a few times, and when I did, like the car just it just stops turning.
Yeah.
It's like all right, you're on the ground, forget it, we're done. Just you're going to go in a straight line until you stop.
Just come to a complete stop and then slowly come back out to the track. So I kind of went into that mode, and I actually went back and watched the team stream of that part. It was kind of funny to listen to Trevor talk about all that. And the whole reason why I did that was I wasn't so much mad about the crash, but I was mad in the sense that I was just pacing myself, wasn't in a hurry to do anything, and I didn't feel like I'd done anything wrong, but yet already we had damage and we were back. I think I went back and looked at this to make sure that I could clarify it right on the show. But I think we fell I was in 11th overall and leading GT when this happened. And then I went all the way to like 25th in GT and
30,
39th overall.
yeah, it was like 38th, 39th overall. Yeah,
Yeah, and so we lost a lot of time in positions because obviously it's the very beginning of the race and not very many people had wrecked or whatever at that point. So my only goal, once I got back out there, as I mentioned earlier, my plan was to play it safe and be really aggressive to give the car to Trevor. Well, then my goal became just being aggressive. Like I just, I didn't care. I was like, you know
This
what?
whole thing's ruined. It's over. Whatever. I don't care if I hand him a steering wheel when I get on the pit road. Here you go.
Well,
Do with this what you will.
yeah, run really hard. um, but it became a thing. It was like, I know it's a 24-hour race, and I know that you should show a lot of patience, but I was already showing patience and got wrecked, so the patience thing is gone. And I was like, I'm driving this race car. And it became a thing now where I wanted to get as many of those positions back so that once Trevor got the car, we weren't as bad off as what we were when I first, came back out after fixing the damage. And I feel like I did that pretty darn successfully because I went back and looked it up just for my own, to I guess to put a smile on my face, to have a selfish moment. But like I said, we were 25th in class and 39th overall. When I got done, I think I'd gotten us back up to like 20th or 21st overall, and we were like 16th in class. I mean, I gained almost half of the spots back, and I know that a lot of that's just because people were wrecking, but still, some of that was just, driving very hard and being consistent
Oh,
enough
you
on the
were.
racetrack.
I mean, don't kid yourself. You were passing people. Like there was no. It wasn't just attrition. It was like you were out there and you were just passing like everybody, because you were like the car was fine after the damage. Like after the repairs were
Yeah,
done, like the car handled fine. It wasn't down on speed really. It wasn't anything. So, and you were proving that you were the leader of the GT class, and now you're back with all the guys who were back in the back of the pack, and you are a lot faster than them. So,
yeah. And it's fun to watch. It was fun actually for me to watch Trevor or to listen to Trevor watch me during that part of the race because like every time that I like there was one point where I went into turn 1, and if you've ever driven turn 1 on the road course at Daytona, it's can get a little hairy if you're around other cars.
hmm.
And there was one point where I think there was like an HPD there, and then there was another HPD, and then there was a GT, and then there was me. And I like passed the GT, got passed by the HPD at the same time, and then passed the other HPD. And it was all like one swift motion as we went through turn 1. And Trevor's sitting over here having a conversation with the audience, and he's just like, and so that is what's oh my okay, okay, you made it through there. Wow, like I would not do that if I was him.
Well, I remember saying that a lot. Like I'm looking, it's like, see, and here's the difference between the way Chad and me, and me drive. Like he has this confidence. I mean, I realize that he has the triple screen, so he has more vision going and whatnot. But that's just like instinct and skill. He's just sticking that car into holes that like may or may not be there. And like given that situation, I would just like, oh, okay, this is happening. I'll just back off. You guys figure it out, and I'll just peacefully go. No, Chad's like, hole, go.
I'm like the Brad Keselowski of it. Like Brad went for that hole at Texas, it closed, but he still went for it. That's kind of what I am. So anyways, I was proud, I guess. I don't like saying that word, but I was still proud of myself for gaining back as many spots as I could because I really was trying, because and I mean not that we were there to win the race. I mean that would obviously be awesome, but not
Right.
that we were there to do that. We were there to finish, especially since we didn't finish the Roar because our entire goal was to finish one of these things because, you know, in case you haven't heard, finishing a 24-hour race is pretty dang cool.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you consider everything we had to go through to get there, which we'll explain as we move along. But anywho, at this point in the race, about the time that I gave the car to Trevor, and I'll let Trevor explain his thing, but I just want to update the show team to this point in the race. Roy Clark had very solidly, steadily, and probably patiently as well, much more patient than I probably, had just kind of hung around fourth or fifth place. And I think for most of that part, he was in fourth. And he did. I mean, I don't know what his lap times were, but he did an awesome job of just keeping the car in the top five. He wasn't really trying to force the issue. He wasn't trying to gain all the spots, and go to the lead or something like that. He just was running good, I'm sure, good lap times and keeping himself right there. And then Dean took over. And Dean is pretty good at road racing. He has a pretty good I rating for the road racing side. And I didn't see Dean do all of this, but he basically just put the thing in another gear and like drove it to the class lead. Now I'm sure he had a little help, maybe on a couple of those cars, but he literally drove the thing to the class lead, and that is where the show car remained for like the next 3 hours.
Yep.
Was in the GT lead, so that was the first really awesome moment for the team. But now we'll get back to Trevor's stint.
Yeah, and obviously we're not going to go into like huge amount of details like through the, we're not going to make a 24-hour podcast to explain our 24-hour race, but
Oh, come on.
my first stint was pretty uneventful as I recall. I mean, there was a couple of ended up a couple offs into the grass, never hit anything, kept the car clean. And that was my only goal, was just to make sure that I gave, a car over that, while crumpled, it was in the same condition that I received it in. And I accomplished that. I mean, I wasn't going out there passing people. I was, going out and doing lap times that were probably 3-4 seconds slower than what Chad was doing. But that's all. I mean, it was weird too, because like I got in the car, like I was the second guy in the car this time, and like that really weighed heavily on me, because like there were people that hadn't had a stint yet. Like, what if I messed this up? And
Yeah.
I knew how to drive the car before, but now it had damage. So was it going to handle any different? Am I going to blow a corner because I expected it to handle this way? And we were doing, we were communicating, and Chad let me know what the car was doing, but nevertheless, it's one of those things where, yeah, okay, we had the thing, we had practiced all our settings, so I had everything set up right. But I mean, I took it real easy for the first couple laps until I got comfortable with it, and then basically just made laps, as Andy would say. I just went out, just lap, 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 and that's, like I said, there was a couple little offs here. I got out of the way of a couple cars, and missed my line a little bit, so got one wheel on the grass. Once you get one wheel on the grass, it's just like, oh no, come here. check out all this other grass that you could be in. Oh, this is pretty cool, I guess.
Beautiful
But
blades of grass.
and it was. I found one thing that was a weakness of mine when it comes to road racing, or at least this style of car, was the fact that come the end of the run, I knew the car had changed. I could feel the way the car had changed, but I don't know enough about the way things work. I didn't know what to do about it. Like, I have tools inside inside the cockpit to change settings, but I didn't know what to do to make it better. I just knew this car sucks now. Like, the last quarter of that stint, that car was a handful. But I didn't know why. I just knew I couldn't drive it anymore. Like, as a matter of fact, Larry was crew chiefing at the time. He's like, okay, you got this many laps till your next pit stop. And like, I was 2 laps to go, and I made a lap that was so bad. Larry says, "We're just going to short pitch you. Just come in now."
Yeah, I remember that.
I said to him, "It's like, oh, is that because I'm horribly out of control, and I can't drive this car anymore?" And just like the shortest of pause. Yep. It's like,
Yep.
okay, I can argue with you there.
Well, and I remember that specifically because you did get like really kind of out of shape in the turn before that. And I was like, whoa, he really is kind of out of control, because I was watching it at this point. And then you went to the next turn, and Larry's like, you know what, Trevor, we're just going to go ahead and pitch you right now. And I'm not kidding. I burst out laughing. I was like, wow, that is awesome.
But I mean, you know what? And that was one of the cool things, was the fact that I had Larry crew chiefing for me and watching over me, and he recognized that, and just as any crew chief would do, he pulled me in. It's like, you know what? No, there's nothing to gain from making you make an extra lap. You're obviously struggling here. Let's give you some new tires and see how she goes from there.
Yeah,
So,
and who knows what would
you
have
know,
happened on that next lap if you had
yeah.
stayed out. You could have fenced it. I mean, you never know.
So yeah, and that's a perfect example of sim racing mirroring real life. Like that's what should have happened. And if I didn't have a crew chief in the situation and I had a number of, I need to pit in this lap, dumb brain, I would have just kept going. But Larry said come in, so I came in. So
So that was a great call on his part.
yep. And the second stint, for some reason, the car didn't get as out of shape towards the end of it as it did the first one, and that was probably to do with the way that I was driving it, and I was more comfortable in the second half of the stint, so it wasn't as bad. I didn't, heat up and ruin the tires as much. Although, apparently, no matter how cool it looks, four-wheel drifting around corners is bad for the car, and Larry told me to stop. It's like, you're four-wheel drifting again. It's like, yeah, but doesn't it look so cool? It's like, don't do that. Just stop
Yeah,
doing that.
I loved how you kept trying to like make it funny, and Larry was like, "Dude, just shut up and drive."
Yeah, I remember I was having conversations. Okay, well, this, that, and the other thing. Don't worry about that. I'll worry about that. Don't do math. Just drive.
You're like, "I want to go ice skating." Trevor, what? Focus. Yes, sir.
Oh, but
Uh,
yeah, there was, yeah, like I said, there was a couple times I was trying to calculate things out. It's like, nope, nope, just no, no. You can't do two things at once. Stop it. Stop trying.
yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
but it was, like I said, it was, a couple offs here and there, but pretty uneventful. Like I said, it got rough during the last half of that, or last little bit of that first half of my stint. But everything was under control, and then what? Yeah, Larry took over the car from me.
no, Tim.
Tim. Oh, that's right. Tim came in after me, right?
And
So
then, and Tim, I gotta say this. I thought I was driving the car really good, and then Tim got in it, and he was like even more of a man on a mission. And he was actually mad about the wreck too that happened with the McLaren. Um, he might have even been more mad than I was, but like he seriously drove. I mean, his lap times were very consistent, lap
oh
after
yeah,
lap after lap, and they were fast. They weren't just like 151, 151, 151. They were like 148, 148, 149, 148. And it was like, wow. And I even told him after his stint, we were talking on Twitter, and I was like, dude, you did awesome. You need to take over more people's stints if you're gonna drive like that. And then I think after that, John got in the car, and John was doing really well as well, except for one thing that was not his fault. Again,
yeah,
um, which was half bad luck and half kind of stupid. He was trying to pass I believe it was a rough car, or everybody calls it Porsche. I'm used to calling it rough, but and I think that rough was a little down on power and had some damage, if I remember correctly. But anyways, they were going into the bus stop, and it was kind of one of those things where I think John thought that the guy was going to be like, okay, he's faster than me. I just let him go as they go into the bus stop. And that guy didn't do that. He kept racing John into the bus stop, which, I was thinking about this the other day. Out of all the turns at Daytona Infield, and I mean, obviously the NASCAR part of the track is not that difficult, but of all the turns in the infield and then the bus stop, I think the hardest turn to race somebody into is the bus stop because it really narrows up pretty quickly in there.
oh yeah,
And you carry so much speed that if you are racing side by side and you either A don't expect to be or B you do expect it, but you can't do it that well. You almost have to really slow down, and if you don't, you go flying off the racetrack and you basically crash. And so I was a little surprised that this guy kept going, but he did. And John, kept going, and John looked like he was going to make the turn pretty well. The Porsche, though, I was concerned by. He didn't look like he had the best angle.
yeah. There was the way he came in. There was no way he was making the turn.
Yeah,
Like he was done. Like he was carried way too much speed in that corner, and he had no angle on it. It was almost like he was coming at it straight, and then had to go like 90 degrees to the left
yeah.
instantaneously.
And when he did that, he lost control of his car, and started spinning to the left. Now, even if John had, and I don't think he has triple screens, but even if he had triple screens and could have seen the rough car spinning across in front of him, there would have been absolutely no time for John to react to that because it happened so fast and he literally spun right in front of John. I mean, it wasn't like he spun 10 feet in front of John, he spun like right there. And so John was pretty much just screwed at that point. And then they kind of carried each other off into the tire barrier. And John hit head on, and the other guy hit from the side. Now, the interesting part about that crash is that John took a tow, and I don't think he had that much time that he had to fix the car because it seemed like he got back onto the track very quickly.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the timing was, but it didn't seem as severe as you would think. Because I mean, like he was just
Yeah,
buried in the tire barrier. Like it was a
yeah. I
hard
mean,
hit.
yeah, it looked like it destroyed it, and then it seemed like he was out there almost as quick as I was for my 8 minute repair, earlier that day. But I don't remember. John would probably be able to tell us, but I don't remember. So after that, that was the only blemish on John's record for the whole day. Everything else, well, he did have problems with his PC, um,
Yeah.
but that didn't. Even though it was affecting him, he actually did a nice job of still being in control of his car and everything. Because I've driven when your computer stutters a little bit, and it's not easy to keep up a level of speed and a level of consistency when you've got that problem. So that's actually quite impressive that he didn't ever spin out with that issue. After that, Larry tried to kill himself on the pit road wall. If you didn't see that crash, it was kind of epic.
I never actually did see it because I was upstairs just kind of roaming around. I couldn't because I was doing the streaming itself on my computer. I was trying to run the stream upstairs on my laptop, and I didn't have enough bandwidth, so it kept stuttering. So I just shut it off. So I was just watching Twitter and stuff. Eventually, I did put it on my phone, which apparently, because it's such a small screen, I guess takes up less bandwidth. So I had it going there. But I just kind of had the Twitter chat up or the Twitch chat up, and I think I saw something like somebody said "whoa" and you said "yikes," and so I immediately ran downstairs. It's like I don't know what happened, but apparently something bad, and I need to find out what.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, basically, Larry tried to slow down for turn one. It didn't really work. Then the car went out of control on him. And you kind of know on that pit exit where you kind of circle around, and then there's no pit wall at first, and then suddenly the pit wall kicks up. Well, Larry cleared all that, but then because he kept going at such an angle, he ended up hitting the wall from the side of his car, and then did a nice flip over top of it and landed on the other side. Um, it was actually quite impressive. I would have given him a 9.8 probably for that performance. But that, I don't know how long that took to fix, but it took a little while. And then eventually he went back out, and eventually the motor blew. So then we were in the pits for another 30 minutes fixing that, but that still, I mean, that's what ended our race in the Roar. So the fact that we were even able to swap it out is pretty awesome.
yep.
Because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have finished. Um, Now, this whole time, the Roar, or not the Roar, but the show team was still having an amazing run. Like I said, they led for probably 3.5 hours. Then they lost the lead, but they were still like second for most of that time. One time, I think they were in third, then they were back in second. I mean, like this whole time, I mean, by the time Larry was racing, we were like 8, 9 hours in. And, now the show team has really not been worse than fifth, throughout most of the day. So they're continuing to do a heck of a job. Haven't had any issues yet either. I mean, they had a couple of incident points between their drivers, but they were just like off tracks and not wrecks.
Yeah,
They weren't
and
like hitting the wall.
and as easy as Daytona road course is, and I mean, it is an easy road course. It's also really easy to get those 1Xs, especially through the bus stop.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to accept you're going to get some of those because you're going to get a wheel off, or in my case, every flipping time you go through it in the second stint. But that's beside the point. Yeah. I was so mad.
And
Oh my god.
yeah, I know. Uh, so every part of their race, up until Scott Feltenhausen took over, was really quite perfect. Which, to be honest, not that I thought that they were going to do horrible, but it was like really impressing me because the thing you guys out there listening gotta keep in the back of your mind here. This is a group of guys that didn't really know each other until our show. And even then, they really only know each other through means of Twitter and listening to us talk about them. And they've never truly raced with each other.
Hmm.
I know that Danny and Roy have raced with each other in the
Right.
V8 series because of us, but they weren't racing necessarily around each other throughout that race. So it's kind of this is a group of six people who have never really been together, and they came together in a week to do a 24-hour race, and yet they're running a perfect race thus far. And when Scott took over, the only reason why I say up until Scott
Yeah. Yeah.
is
This
because
this
he
isn't about
had
to this isn't about to be a bash on Scott thing. In case you were
yeah.
curious.
This is it's almost funny, but it's not.
Oh, it's funny.
Scott. Well, it's not because it hurt them a little,
I know, but
but Scott had a an issue with his sim rig, and at first, all I had heard was that the show team had wrecked and that they had damage and they were on in the pits fixing it. But then a few minutes after that, there was a Twitter picture that popped up from Scott showing what had happened, and I don't totally remember what it was, but basically somehow his steering wheel came off of his rig. Is that correct?
yeah, as my understanding is that somehow he was, and I think it was on the when you're leaving the infield road course going into NASCAR one, I believe. Uh, when he made the turn, somehow he ripped the steering wheel off of off of his rig, and subsequently, well, since he was no longer driving, smashed the wall pretty hard because he no longer had control of his vehicle. So,
Yeah.
which reminds me of a quick story from when I was in the Navy. Some of the newest Navy ships that we have in the Canadian Navy, and I promise this is quick. They have something dumb. Like the way that like if you're up in the bridge, the way that they're controlled is they have like this little almost flight yoke looking thing to steer it. Like I sailed on some old ships where you actually had the big wheel, and you're steering it with that, and you have this big there's a name for it. I can't remember that you send to the engine room on how to fast to go in this big ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. Now the new ones have this little tiny joystick-like thing to steer it, and they have these little nub stick things for the throttles, like both sides of the engine. There's two engines in the ship that I was on, and they were really skinny, and they were really fragile. And I remember there was one guy that I used to sail with, and he one time it was like all both engines all ahead full, and he pushed them all forward, snapped both of them off. And the guy who's in charge of the bridge, it's called the officer of the watch. It's so and you kind of you communicate with him through official channels. It's like officer of the watch this, now doing this, officer of the watch now coming north, right to this degree and all this good stuff, or starboard sailors getting past me. But so in this point in time, his protocol kicked in as to what he was supposed to do. So he snapped both the throttles off. So now one engine's going at a certain speed, the other engine's going at a different speed. We're slowly listing in the middle of the ocean, and he just holds up both throttles and goes, "Officer of the watch," and he had nothing else to say. Just held up these two throttle things in his hands and say, "I don't know what to do about this." So when I heard that Scott had done that, the first thing I pictured was just him holding the steering wheel up. "Officer of the watch." It's like,
Oh.
what do I do with this?
uh, yeah.
So,
So after they got that fixed and got their car fixed, they resumed the race, and I think they only lost a couple spots because by this time there had been a lot of people having issues, so they were actually several laps ahead of other cars.
right.
And so I think they only fell like to fourth or fifth, if I remember correctly. But then they recovered pretty nicely towards the end. and ended up with a good finish. But we'll get to that in a minute. So let's see. By this point, we're like halfway through the race, and this is about the point where we had quit out of the roar because of our engine.
Yeah, because we made
So
it
I
about
was
11
like, "Hey,
hours. You know.
yeah," I was like, "Yay, we're going further than we ever have." But this is also the point where you start to get up towards late evening, at least in American time. Late evening, and then you get to the early morning hours, which are, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever raced early in the morning, but it's kind of difficult to do that.
Well,
At
I
least,
guess well, I mean, I'm just trying to think before we get to our stints there. Was there anything else eventful that happened? I mean, Larry,
well,
Larry, do a barrel roll hail, did his thing. John, blew the motor. John had a pretty uneventful second stint because he took it out the car over from there. I don't think anything much happened
yeah,
during
John came
his.
back on after Larry, and then I think he did pretty good. And then I think Tim got back in the car and he did his super fast driving again.
Yeah.
And then Tim went to bed, and then Larry took back over. And one thing that we will
Oh
say
yeah.
here is that Larry actually ran, I'm pretty sure, a perfect stint then. I don't think he had any off tracks or
I
anything.
think he had a couple little grass type things, but yeah, at that point in time, it came through where like Larry was mad that it had happened and whatnot, and at this point in time, Andy had come on to crew chief. He wasn't in the race with us, but he came on to crew chief, and he coached Larry through like almost that entire stint. And Larry is the kind of driver who really likes that constant chatter in his ear when it comes to position of other cars, just the focusing and everything. And Andy did an awesome job and really got Larry back on track. And Larry had an almost perfect second stint after a pretty bad first one, and then just came right back, got back on the horse, so to speak, and did an awesome job. So that was great. Like that,
Yeah,
that I
which
love that.
is more impressive than some of you guys may think because it in if you've never participated in this team racing, as Trevor mentioned earlier in his first stint, he had pressure on himself more so than going fourth or fifth, because no one else has done their stint except for me.
Right.
And it team racing adds in a different style of pressure because when you're just racing individually, it's like, well, there's pressure for me to do really well, and then if you wreck, it's like, well, that's over with, and you're done.
Yeah, I'll go do something else now. Yeah.
Yeah, in team racing, it's like there's pressure on you to do really well, but then it's like if I wreck, well, that screws up Trevor, that screws up Larry, that screws up Tim, that screws up John, that screws up this guy, this guy, this guy. And it just keeps going down the list, and it messes. Like what I did from 8 to 10 a.m., while it seems like such a very small part of the whole puzzle, is very important because it sets up everything else.
Hmm.
And then what Trevor did from 10 to 12 sets up everything else. And then and it's like if Larry goes and wrecks the car at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, at midnight, that affects me because the car's different than when I got in it the first time. And there's a different style of pressure in team racing. And so for Larry to go out in his first stint and have that wreck, and then the engine blew, which it was because of the wreck with John, and then the wreck with Larry, and all that damage, I think, just caused the engine to let go. And for him, like, and he actually sent us a couple of emails, like apologizing and feeling, really bad. And you could tell that he was sorry about it, but also mad,
Hmm.
and as he should be. And he not as he should be sorry, but as he
You
should
should
be
be
mad.
mad. Yeah.
And
To
just to
clarify.
clarify that, you should be sorry. Um, and then for him to come back and put all that, because like at first I was actually kind of worried. I was like, okay, is he going to be too mad and upset with himself that he's just not going to come back and do a stint? I actually had that thought, like, come on, Larry, you still got to come
Well,
back.
And as a side note to that, the fact that like I popped in after it happened and came down and jumped on TeamSpeak because I wasn't on TeamSpeak most of the day because after I did my stint I kind of had to, you know, do my husband and parent thing for most of the day until the kids went to bed, and then I was down for a bunch afterward. But I came down and checked in with Larry, and he was alone in the TeamSpeak channel. It's like, oh, okay, so you're hanging out here. It's like, yeah, well, I think they all just left in disgust. Like he was just like he was down, and then and at that point in time, I came down just to check quick, but I'd already arranged with my wife that for the next few hours she was going to watch after the kids, and I was going to go have a nap because I mean I slept like crap the night before. I got up really early to start the stream and do all that stuff, so I was dead on my feet. It's like, okay, well, Larry, I feel sorry that you don't have anybody here now, but I this is my window. If I'm going to have a nap, it has to happen now. So I got to go. And he's, yeah, I wouldn't want to hang around with me either for this. Like he was down. So for him to come back and have that awesome second stint was just like, was really, really good. Like it made me feel so
Yeah.
good that he came back and recovered from that so quick. So,
Yeah, and so that's why when I said earlier that it was really impressive and more impressive than you guys listening might realize. That's why, because he was so down, and then he came back and I mean I'm sure that Andy doing all that coaching helped,
oh,
but
absolutely.
he still has to drive the car. Andy can talk all he wants, but Larry's still the one driving the car. So for him to do that, because I was worried, well, now he's going to come back in a second stint and he's going to be mad at himself, but he's going to probably calm down. He's going to be like, okay, this is going well. And then suddenly he's going to wreck again and it's going to really, explode for him. But, I mean, if he just ran off a couple turns, that's no big deal. But for him to run that well of a stint was pretty awesome.
Hmm.
Um, After that, I got back in the car at midnight, my time. And um, our car was a little off speed. It was also a little off center with the steering,
Hmm.
but it wasn't bad. It was still
Very drivable.
somewhat easy to drive. I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't. It When I first got in it, it felt like a tank, and I use that word specifically. But after I'd heard Tim earlier on say that at first it's really weird, but then you get used to it. And I heard him say that on the stream, and I'm glad I did because that helped me prepare for when I got in the car. And it was weird the first few laps, but I kept telling myself, Tim says you get used to it. And I eventually did. And then it was like, well, this is nothing.
Yeah.
Now, the one funny thing that we need to mention that happened, um, and it has since become even more funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's since become an inside joke over Twitter.
yes. As we mentioned, Andy was on and coaching, and I think he did some of that in Tim's stint too.
I believe he did.
Yeah, and then he did all of Larry's, and then after that it was me. Well, when I got there, right before I got in the car, I tried to be as nice as possible and told Andy that I didn't need that much information because I'm like the total opposite to Larry. Whereas Larry needs as much as he can possibly get to help him drive and focus. For me, all that information would be very distracting and I would probably end up crashing more so than keeping it on the road. And the reason is because if Andy was saying there's somebody 10 back, that's one thing. But if Andy says, all right, 5 back, and then I'm entering a corner and he's telling me that somebody's 5 back, and then he suddenly says 2 back right after that, that would cause me to like panic and think that the guy's like overshooting the turn and I'm getting ready to be crashed. And then I would like jerk the wheel to the left and give the guy the spot that he never was even trying to get yet.
Hmm.
So that's the reason why I was like, I don't need that information. I just need there's an HPD coming up. Be aware. And that's really all I needed.
Right. And a side note for those who don't actually watch real racing and stuff, when he's saying 5 back, 2 back, he's referring to how many car lengths back they are from the
Yeah.
car. So it's
Yeah.
not 5 seconds, it's 5
Yeah.
car lengths, 10 car lengths,
It's
that sort of thing.
5.1 seconds behind. Yeah, so I mean that the only time, and I even said this, the only time that I would ever want that much information is on a plate track where it doesn't take a ton of concentration. And I like that kind of information because there's so much going on in a quick amount of time. in a plate race that it's good to have which lane is moving, which lane can I jump in and out of, kind of thing. But in a road race like this, that would have been like, and it's not because it's Andy, but it could have been anybody. It would just be very distracting to me. Um, but since then, this has become, and I wish that I'd have known that this existed beforehand because I would have done it because it would have made it more funny. Um, but there is a Formula One driver whose name escapes me.
Kimi Räikkönen.
Yes, Kimmy. And apparently, I guess a few years ago or something, he was driving, and his car engineer jumped on the radio and says, and this is just a little video clip that Andy sent me that and sent in the email, and I laughed really hard when I watched it. And the engineer comes on and he says, "I'll give you data on your gaps, and then I'll give you data on your laps." So basically, just stating, "I'll let you know where the car is, how far you are to the car in front and the car behind, and what your lap times are." To which Kimmy responds almost immediately and says, in case you haven't ever heard or seen the video like I hadn't, he says, "Leave me alone, I know what I'm doing," which I just thought was hilarious because it kind of, I didn't say that to Andy, but it kind of played in with what we were doing.
But if
And
you had known about that, then it would have been
yes,
perfect if Andy jumped in to say, "Okay, all right, Chad, you're getting in here, and you said, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing." Would have been hilarious.
I know, because I could just see it. Like, I wish I'd have known about it, because I would have gone out on the racetrack and ran a couple laps, and Andy's like, "All right, man, I'm going to give you everything you need to know. Shut up, I know what I'm doing. Go away." Uh, but so now it's become like this huge joke on Twitter, and I think Roy Clark sent me and Andy a picture of the little candy that you can get at Valentine's Day, and one piece said, "Leave me alone." The other piece
It's
said, "I
like,
know what I'm
I know
doing."
what I'm doing.
Uh, so that was great.
Rejected sweethearts or whatever they're
Yeah.
called.
Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. Oh, that was great.
And then it's funny. And then Andy was like, "All right, well, I was talking to him on the Twitch chat because he was watching in there. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna, and or Chad's got it covered, so I'm gonna, bugger off for a little bit type thing, And I came in. It's like, well, if you're still up, and I get in the car, you can crew chief the hell out of me. I don't care. See, because I'm more like Larry. I'm fine with constant chatter in my ears and whatnot. I mean, heck, I'm pretty sure I broke into song a couple times during my own stint just because I was. It's like, well, I got to do something. I'm just making laps, but
Yeah. But
so yeah, your stint in the wee hours of the night
yeah,
was.
the 12 to 2 a.m. stint, was that the one where, yeah, it would have been because you were still there. Um, that was the one where, and by the way, when I came back at 12 a.m., I had not driven the car for like 16 hours.
Yeah, the way the stints worked out was weird for
Yeah.
like you and me.
Yeah, it was. You and I got chipped on all this. I think we should protest or something. We got the worst jobs of all of them. But and when I came back at 12 a.m., like I said, it had been like 16 hours. I had been following the race all day long. I watched between when my stint was over with and my next stint, so like the 16 hours or whatever. I watched almost all of that. There was very little time when I was not watching it, and when that was going on, the stream was in the background. So I
Right.
still had it up. I was just kind of occasionally not looking at it. And so when I got back in the car at 12 a.m. and then Andy vanished and never came back, whatever. But he or Trevor noticed something that I had noticed, but I didn't say anything because I was just kind of in quiet mode and driving. Um, but I ended up being around like a buttload of cars.
I mean, there's been attrition at this point in time. Like, there's still a pretty full field ish, because of all the new repair stuff. But there's not 100 cars on this track. There's
Yeah.
probably 25 cars left on the track, whatever. Yet somehow Chad jumps out and he's in this group of like no less than like 8 cars.
I mean, all
For
right
no
there.
reason. Like nobody's racing anybody for position. Like they're just but they're all exactly the same speed. Nobody can get away from each other, and it's just this gaggle for some reason.
Yeah. And that's what I came back to. That was my welcome back party.
It's like, all right,
Uh,
no time to get your groove, you get in your groove, and remember your braking points and do all this stuff and getting a feel for the new car, the way it's driving. No, no, no. Here you are with all of the cars. They're just going to be around, just this blob going around the track. Not the rest
you
of the
either
track is
have to,
the rest of the
you either
track's just
have to,
blank. Just you.
yeah, you either have to be passed by them or pass them. You can't just ride around. So that was the first hour of my stint back. So that was a nice welcome back party. After that, after I made a pit stop, it quieted down a lot.
Hmm.
That was it was still kind of fun because that was the point where either half of our team was asleep. I think John and Tim had already gone to bed, and Larry probably too. Um, and Andy, who knows what he did, but he probably went to sleep. And so
He was all writing
he was
hate
crying in
notes
the
to
corner.
chat. Sure, shut up. You know what you're doing. What?
Oh, I don't need you. Next time you want to spot for me, I'm just going to throw you out. Um, but so it ended up just being me and Trevor, which was kind of neat because I think the first half of my stint, and a large part of it was because I was surrounded by cars, but I was also quiet. And then in the second part of that stint, I became a little bit more talkative. And I remember telling Trevor that I'm not much of a morning person, even though I can get up and don't have a problem with getting up, but I just don't like it.
Hmm.
And it takes me like 25 minutes to warm up to the point where I can like carry on a conversation with somebody. And I remember telling Trevor that that's why when I get married, I'm going to tell my wife that for the first 30 minutes I'm awake, she can't talk to me because I'm going to be like, don't talk to me.
I know what
And
I'm doing.
yeah, go away. So, I remember saying that because that was kind of how I treated that, even though I hadn't just woken up. But it was like, okay, it's morning, and I'm not going to talk for like about an hour. And hey, Trevor, how's it going? All of a sudden,
Yeah, yeah,
after
because like,
that,
yeah, for the second half of the stint, you're just making conversation. You're gonna,
yeah,
gonna be doing it, and you're just talking. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you talking this much?
yeah. Um, but after that, Trevor got back in the car, and I went away for a little while when he first did that. I didn't go take a nap or anything because I can't do that apparently. Um, so then I came back and Trevor and I talked for a while. And one of these stints through here, we said something that Roy Clark really liked about how we were just going to go ahead and record the show.
Yeah, like, yeah, it was. I can't remember if it was during my stint or your stint, but like I said, it was just the two of us. I think it's like we should just do the show now because like
Yeah.
we're here, we got nothing, we can't go anywhere. So
Yeah. Now, here's one thing that I will say about our race, and then we'll update you quickly on the show team's race to this point. The thing that I thought was pretty impressive is that from the time that the McLaren ran over me at 8:30 in the morning, all the way up until uh, my second stint, the first hour of my second stint, all the way through there, every person that drove the car, even if it was only one spot, gained positions back that we had lost. Because I watched that and I kept noticing that we were gaining spots. And even Larry, in his first stint, gained spots, and then when he wrecked, he lost some of them back. But in the second stint, I think he still gained a couple of spots back. Obviously, this was through attrition because at this point, everybody was on like way different laps than everyone else. But after I got in the car at midnight, there were like two spots that I gained kind of somewhat right away because people had ended up on pit road, whether that was still going on Larry's stint or it happened when I took over, I don't know. But they ended up on the pit or in the pit, so we ended up gaining a couple spots, and this put us back into ninth in class, and I think like 15th or so overall in the standings. And from that point, so probably let's just say 12:45 a.m. all the way through until Tim got in the car at like 6:25 a.m. Nothing changed position wise. Like not one time. And the only time that it changed when Tim got in the car is he gained one spot overall. And that was it. So like for the last 6 hours or so of the race, Nothing changed position wise, which I just
we,
thought was very interesting.
we'd already gotten what we were going to get, and that was it. So,
Yeah. Now the show team continued to obviously be very impressive, and I think by this time they had gotten back into fourth. And I don't forget who was driving. I think Jeff was driving, maybe when I was in the car
I don't remember.
the first time. That is, and I think Roy or somebody got back in when Trevor was in, or something like that. But they were still doing a tremendous job with what they had to work with. I know they were in fourth in class, and I think they were like ninth overall, maybe, or 10th overall. So they were still having a tremendous race and really had not had any more problems since the steering wheel rip-off issue. Now,
Steering wheel
after
ripoff issue.
yeah, after Trevor did his last stint, which he did a great job again, kept it on the track for the most part, except for a couple of 1Xs. And for the record, I kept telling him, I'm such a great crew chief. Every time Trevor would run off the road and get a 1X, I'd be like, nice 1X. Like, you dummy, what are you getting those for?
Yeah.
Um, so I got back in the car at 4 a.m. my time. Now, to this point, I have not only watched and participated in some of the first 22 hours of well, 20 hours by this point, um, but I have also not gone to bed or slept any. So I was kind of doing the same thing that the guys that did the solo 24, except I just wasn't racing. But I was staying up. Yay.
That's different.
Yeah, I know. And it's probably much safer. um, so I got back in the car at 4 a.m. and this is the point where Trevor left and went to bed to try to get some sleep. And so I ended up being in the room all by myself. And when I say room, I mean TeamSpeak. And not only did it get very quiet and kind of peacefully quiet, but I was really beginning to get tired. And part of the reason why I don't like the fact that those guys did the 24 hours by themselves is because I had only raced for 6 hours and it was split up. Even though I stayed up the whole time, it was split up and I wasn't just sitting here driving the whole time. And my mind and that last stint that I did from 4 to 6 a.m. really started shutting down. It got to the point where I was like, okay, I was kind of just sitting like this. Like, I know you guys that are listening to the audio can't see this, but I was like almost like a statue driving. I was like trying to stay awake. And it got to a point where, and this is a story that I really wanted to tell because I went into turn one about halfway, or I think it was at 5:36 a.m. I just remember looking at the clock on my Z1 dashboard, and that's what it said. So my stint was almost over. Tim was getting ready to come into the server. And I remember going into turn one, and I hope that I describe this in a way that makes sense. I went into the turn, my left foot, I'm a left foot braker, my left foot hit the brake the way it's supposed to, my hands turned the steering wheel the way it's supposed to, and I made the corner successfully.
All right.
But my mind honestly like blacked out at that point, and I swear when I got through that turn and started going to the horseshoe, I actually had a moment where I thought, did I go through turn one? Like I actually got scared because I didn't feel like I went through turn one, and I had to remember what turn I was in because I was so out of it. And I like then I as soon as that happened, it scared me that I was gonna wreck, because I was like really starting to go away. That I actually started like humming to myself, and I didn't necessarily talk out loud, but I started talking in my mind. And one of the ways that I actually kept myself awake and kind of active is I started thinking of everything that I need to tell Tim. Okay, is the car still the same? Is it different than when he last drove? He might be about 5 minutes short on fuel, so he might need to make an extra pit stop. Let's see, this car's still running here. I was started thinking about all kinds of stuff. And honestly, if I wouldn't have done that, who knows what would have happened? Because it helped my mind stay active Whereas before that, I was not very active in my mind. I was just kind of there. So I will say that that was probably one of the I've been in some difficult races on iRacing and difficult stints and endurance so far, but that was by far probably the most difficult thing I've had to do, and it's not because of the track or the car, but it had everything to do with my mind
Mm.
and my being tired by that point. So that was rough to get through, but I got through it. I didn't make a single mistake. For my entire 6 hours of driving, I actually only had six incidents, two of which were those stupid bogus one-off in the bus stop, and I never even went off the track. I just hit the thing wrong, and the other four came from the McLaren. So I mean, I ran three really good stints, and it the one that's really impressive was that 4 to 6 a.m. because that was pretty rough. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, when I did the midnight to two, like for me, it was like even then it was I was tired. I mean, and it was, and I kept telling myself, like it's like because I thinking about the situation, I kept telling myself how tired I was and how, this was silly that I'm racing till 2 in the morning,
Yeah.
but thinking it's like, well, you know what? Like, there's a lot of times I just stay up late and play video games anyway, or I go over to my buddy's place. It's like this is no different. It's like, shut up, Trevor. You're being an idiot. Yeah, like, like you do this all the time. It's all of a sudden now that it's with this on this specific schedule, this in this exact event, as opposed to you just willy nilly playing games and stuff. That somehow it just seems different. It's like this is no different. Just play your game and then go to bed. Everything's fine. Just stop being a big baby. But that's a lot different than 4 to 6 in the morning. Like I took the 2 to 4 because it was only midnight to two for me, and I figured that probably would have been the worst shift for an East Coast person. So, taking 12 to 2 seemed much more palatable than 2 to 4. 2 to 4 I think would be horrible.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you don't sleep beforehand, but if you did, then so.
And my 4 to 6 would have been okay, especially if Andy could have raced, because then Andy would have done the 12 to 2, the midnight to 2, which I ended up doing, which I chose that one because I had something to do between the other stint, which would have been 8 to 10. So I mean, I did it to myself, so to speak. But um, if Andy would have been able to race, he would have done the midnight to 2. I would have been in bed and then would have just woken up for the 4 a.m. and it would have been fine. But because I stayed up, it made that stint very hard. And I'm not kidding. After I had that problem with my mind, I was ready to be done. Like I always enjoy racing when I'm on here, and I'm like, yay, race, race, race. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm glad that that's over with. But sometimes it's like, man, I wish we could keep going. That was one of those moments where I was like, I'm done. Goodbye.
This is over.
I'm not coming back. And I was actually, and this was dumb of me, but then, because I know Tim, but I had the thought of, oh my gosh, what if Tim doesn't wake up? What if he doesn't come? What if he's late? What if he doesn't get here? Oh, please, Tim. And then I just started fasting and praying, please, Tim, come. Please, dear God, wake Tim up. Please help Tim to get here.
I
Oh
can't drive
man,
another 2 hours.
I know. Oh, and I was like, if he doesn't come, I'm parking the car and
Yes,
I'm
I'm just
leaving.
going to park and get out of the car, and then when Tim shows up, then he can just get into the empty car sitting on pit road.
I
I'll just
was
put a
like, if my
sticker on the
team,
steering wheel that says, "Sorry, I missed you. Gone to
yeah,
bed."
and if my team sends me an email and says, Chad, why did you stop racing? I'm just gonna be like, man, my health is more important than your stupid race car.
I didn't
Uh,
break it. I didn't dent it. I just left it.
yeah, I parked it in the exact parking spot in the lines, which is hard to do at that early in the morning. But I got through it. But I did. I wanted to stay up and watch Tim, and I wanted to even stay up and help, kind of spot for him. But as I told him, I'm like a zombie right now. I need to leave. Um, and I went and crashed.
And then we get to Tim's final stint that gets us to the end of the race. And the only thing that was exciting in there, from my understanding, was apparently because I got back up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock Eastern. Like I got up 15 minutes before the race was over, so I could be there for the end of the race and shut down the stream and all that good stuff. But I wanted to be there for the end of the race, so I went to bed at 2:30, woke up at 6, and then went back to bed for a little bit of time afterwards. But apparently, in the wee hours of the morning, somebody, an HPD driver, had gotten out of their car, or at least had pulled down the pit road and then stepped away from their actual physical sim rig, and somehow left it in neutral or whatever, and the car actually had rolled down pit road and was actually sitting in the middle of turn one, like with nobody physically driving it. It was just sitting there, and apparently it sat there for a few laps before the guy came back and realized his car was not where he left it, and then got it off the track. But so apparently there was an obstacle for a short period of time. So that was probably exciting for a bunch of people who were probably just, half them were as much zombies as you were. It's like,
Yeah.
Driving into the corner, it's like, all right, tell me you see that car too. 'Cause
It's like, because I know I saw a car sitting in the middle of the road, but it is like 5 a.m. in the morning, so I could be imagining that there's a car there. But there's that car again. Is it still there? Are you seeing that car?
so, and then he ended up having to make a pit stop like with 15 or 10 minutes to go. So whatever, you were
Yeah.
saying about the fuel, like they couldn't
Yeah,
quite
which,
make it.
and I knew that we weren't going to make it, so I want, he actually figured it out before I could tell him. But I wanted to make sure that he knew that because I was like, I don't think we're going to make it because somehow, I guess between where we had to fix some damage throughout, earlier on, I think it kind of messed up our pitch strategy just a little,
Hmm.
and somehow we ended up 5 minutes short. So, but I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like we were going to lose. We were 3 laps ahead of the guy behind us, and we were 3 laps behind the guy in front of us. So it wasn't like it was crucial that we had,
Right.
to do that. So, but in the end, and I didn't watch any of Tim's stint because I was in La La Land.
As was I.
Um,
Well, I watched the last 15 minutes, but
yeah. But Tim, like I said earlier, Tim picked up one overall position because an HPD had wrecked out, I guess, at that point. And actually, when he took over, we were 3 laps away from passing it. So he did that, I think, pretty quickly once he got in the car. So our team ended up finishing 14th overall out of 40 cars, I think, or
I,
39.
I think it was 39 or 40 took the green flag.
Actually, I got the results. Let's just look. Uh,
Wait, but you can't see.
yeah, I can. Um,
41
so
registered, but it's kind of
yeah,
hard to tell because,
I think only 40 actually started,
yeah. And
if
then
I
everybody
remember correctly.
showed 400, like anybody who was
Yeah,
solo.
right here. I'm looking at it right now. Laps complete. Oh wow, this only shows 33 teams actually completed laps.
Well, that's not true.
Nope,
No,
that's what it shows.
that's because
Oh, they got
some of
disqualified.
those are single driver teams, and if you're a single driver,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you automatically get disqualified.
that's right. But anyways, so we'll just kind of go with 40. Basically a 40 car field. We finished 14th overall and ninth in GT class, which we got everything out of it that we could.
Yeah,
Because, like I said, by the end of the race, so many people were separated by so many laps, up and down through the top 10 and everything, that we literally got the highest finish we could have. So, based on the circumstances. Um, for our team, and I said this in an email, I was really quite pleased with how we kept fighting and we kept, trying to, we didn't just quit, and I especially point that towards Larry because he had struggled. And then, he could have easily just said, you know what, guys, I'm tired of screwing up. Goodbye. And, but, we all stuck with it. We all fought back. Yeah, we had some setbacks, but we did well enough to get, I mean, we got a top 15 finish in a 24-hour race.
yeah, like that
That's
is
not bad.
no, not at all. Like I am super impressed by that.
Yeah. Now, what's even more impressive is the show team.
Right.
As we mentioned, They had been having a pretty strong race. But there's a couple of things that are really impressive about their race.
Hmm.
Our team had five different drivers, and we completed, I think, like 700 some laps. And we ended up with a total of 47 incident points, which in a 24-hour race and three wrecks
Oh, that is
is
still
actually,
super impressive.
yeah, is actually pretty darn good if you really think about it. I mean, I once saw a guy have 60 incident points in a single race that lasted for 1 hour at Darlington. So we had 47. And I even told Trevor in the stream, I'm actually kind of impressed that we only have that many incident points because it could have been a lot worse. The show team, not only did they outclass us on the results, they outclassed us on the incident points. And I'll let you take over because I've been talking quite a lot.
They oh, and with our incident points, I ended up with 13, and like all of them were grass related.
Yes,
Like I said,
they
during
were.
that second stint, like late at night, kind of tired, like I was getting mad. Like I go through that bus stop and see that stupid 1X pop up, and I'm like, "Dude," like
I think I remember you cussed at one point.
I did because I was getting so frustrated with that.
I
It's
was
like,
like,
are you
whoa, family
kidding
show,
me?
Trevor, family show.
I mean, I didn't cuss bad. It was just, I
No.
used the D word, I darn it, but
I think you said
but
the
I,
H word too.
yeah, well, I am an ex-sailor. It's actually probably impressive that I don't swear as, at all as it is. But anyway, it
But
was,
actually, you had the second most incident
I
points.
did, and somehow John ended up with 15, and I don't know how.
Yeah, I don't either.
Like I looked at that, it's like, when? Like he had the bus stop incident, and that was worth
And that's
4, but
15.
and
I
he
mean,
had,
Larry flipped the car, and he only ended up with
and he only
9.
had 9. Like,
Tim ended up with 4, which was not his fault. A Porsche spun out right in front of him,
oh yeah, I forgot
and
about
he
that
just
one.
clipped it.
He pretty much T-boned that thing. I'm surprised he didn't have more damage because like it
Yeah,
spun out and just like you're driving, all of a sudden door right
doink.
in front of you. Like whoa,
Yeah, I don't even think he had any required repairs. I don't remember him having to pit after that. So yeah, Tim had 4, Trevor 13, Larry 9. I had 6, but like I said, 4 of those were from the McLaren, and the other 2 were those little stupid 1Xs in the bus stop. And then John somehow ended up with 15.
don't
I
know.
think he just wanted to be the best.
I think he was just collecting them from other people. Like spare. Do you got any spare incidents? Because I don't have any. I don't know because I watched his stints and I don't know what he did. But
I don't either.
anyway, up to the iRacing Today radio show team. Like I said, 47 incident points for a 4 hour for a 24-hour race is impressive. Like
Yeah.
that is, I was proud of that. The listener team, the team that was hobbled together in a span of a week of a bunch
And
of
we should mention their names
strangers,
again. Mention their names again.
and they were Dean Mall, Jeff McPherson, Roy Clark, Scott Feldhausen, Danny Resser, and Ben Stock. They ended up with 16 incident points. 16. Like in a 24-hour race. 16. Like
4 of which came from the great rip the
no,
steering
actually
wheel
it
off.
wasn't even. He got 2. He got
Oh yeah, he
2
did. He
for
got
that
2.
cuz he kind of spun out and hit the wall. 2 incident points. Scott ended up running what 84 laps, and the only 2 incident points he had was when he ripped his sim rig apart in the middle of the race. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
Now, the only people that had less incident points were the people that completed like almost no laps.
yeah, I know. I was just looking at that. It's like the last to get somebody that was even close to him was in 27th position,
Yeah.
and they did 19 laps.
Yeah.
So,
No, they did 133.
wait,
You're looking at points. They had 15
oh,
incident
there it
points,
is, 133. Yeah, okay.
and they did 133 laps, which that's 133 laps. The show team completed 738 laps and had 16. Our team completed 717 laps. So, I, like,
That is amazing.
yeah,
Like, Okay, and so in the end, they ended up finishing fourth in class and ninth overall, which again, bloody amazing. A couple things to mention about these, these the bad news bears, just thrown together here. They there was a couple times Chad went down to their channel and they had one guy crew chiefing, one guy spotting, like completely and totally in tune and professional, and like there was never, I swear, less than three people down in that channel, working together as a
And
team.
the most impressive thing, all six of them were on TeamSpeak in the final minutes of the race, or the
Yeah,
final, probably the whole stint that Scott ran.
yeah, they all got up so that they could be there for the end of the race. Now,
Yeah,
another side note to that is the fact that three of these drivers are in the States, two of them are in the UK, and one of them is in Australia. So I don't know what time 6 o'clock in the morning to me is in the UK or Australia, but I bet you it's not good. I mean,
and if it is good, they probably had been asleep for very little.
so so they all got up so that they could celebrate it as a team, which was super awesome. Like for us, I'm the only guy who got up. Everybody else just ignored the end. But
Hey, I survived for almost all of it. No, but I know that Roy, I think Roy's first stint was at like midnight his time. And then he said that he stayed up, like for a long point after that. And then most of the race was during the day for him on Sunday, I guess. And then it would have been like late at night, I guess, or maybe not.
I don't ask me.
For
You know that I don't know how time zones work, so
Yeah,
that's
I
already
know
been
that.
established.
But I mean, yeah, who knows? Even if it wasn't, a ridiculous hour, all these guys had probably stayed up through most of it because of the fact that they were so involved with what was going on with the race.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's not only incredible where they finished and how they finished with the incident points, but I mean, they really. I think I mentioned this in an email where they really seemed to. These guys came together in a week, and they acted as if they had been a team for years
Hmm.
and like knew everybody's moves and everything, but they didn't. They just literally came together.
Yeah, I mean, and like consider that. I mean, consider the fact that here are some guys you're racing with. They're technically kind of strangers to you, and then you throw on the fact that if I mess up, I'm ruining the race for these people. Like that is a heck of a lot of pressure. I mean, like it was pressure on us, but I mean, we all kind of know each other. I mean, we've been racing with each other for a long time. So yeah, it was nerve wracking, but it was we knew that it wasn't a big deal, I guess. Like it wasn't that much pressure. But I mean, here's a guy that you don't know personally, that you never raced with, and all of a sudden you have his hopes of competing in this race on your shoulders. Like the
Yeah.
first guys who did the first couple stints, like that had to have been like seriously nerve wracking. But like I said, they all came together. Like they all cared that they had to make sure that the car made it, to the next guy. Like there was serious concern for the other guys. Like there was,
Yeah.
like, it was amazing.
And they even said that, they were all worried about getting the car to the next person. Like I remember Danny saying that, or at least I think it was Danny in his email. He was saying we were all so concerned with having a car to give to the next guy,
Hmm.
and that's probably the biggest part about team racing. The one thing I will say in mentioning Danny, for that 4 to 6 a.m. stint that I ran, which I think for him was 3 to 5 a.m. because I think he's in Central Time Zone. Um, he and I, it was throughout the race, being in the same split. Both of our cars were around each other at various times. Sometimes we were really far away, sometimes we were right together. I remember in my very first stint, I passed Roy at one point, and I remember saying something like "picture time," and then we all ended up kind of taking pictures of our cars. And then all throughout the day, we were together and not together. But for some reason, when I got back in the car for my last stint at 4 a.m. and Danny was in the car, I guess it happened right when I came out uh, after Trevor had given me the car. I ended up for that pretty much that entire 2 hour stint being right around Danny. Like, I think there was probably 30 minutes of that 2 hour stint where he and I were not together. And that's because he pitted and then eventually I pitted. And after I pitted, we came back together. And I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, I followed him for almost that entire stint. It's like I was like, man, we talk about podcast dragons. Now everybody's going to see double because we're like right there. So, but that was fun. And, I kept thinking the whole time I was following him, remember what Trevor said. Remember what Trevor said. Don't wreck the show car. Don't wreck the show car.
Yes, because the question was asked, is there any team orders? It's like the only team orders is don't wreck each other. Other than that, have fun. But for the love
Yeah.
of Pete, don't end up with this pile of orange and green off of the side.
Yeah. But it was fun. And I'm glad that our team finished the race. And I really am that because after the Roar where we didn't, it was great for us to finish it and get to experience the full, 24 hours and all the different driver swaps and everything. But I'm, because of the show, I'm more impressed and more happy with the fact that the show team finished the race. Like if we had finished the race, or excuse me, if we had not finished the race, I'd have been a little bummed. But I would still be like, come on, show team, finish that race, and not because, it's a part of our team or anything, but it's because it's six guys who probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do this team racing otherwise. So for them to go in their first attempt and not knowing each other and finishing it and then finishing really well is like so freaking cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
I don't even know what words to use.
yeah, and that was the thing. I mean, like we were, like, it was, I sent in an email, like we talked about it afterwards and whatnot. As corny as it sounds, like I was proud of these guys, for doing what they had done. I mean, and I was so happy the fact that this was, something that we helped bring together. I mean, not taking credit for it on any level, but it is the fact that, we, through doing what we do, which is to help increase the enjoyment of iRacing for other people. That's why we do what we do here. And we were able to, we do that in general, but this was such a specific thing that we were able to help with. Like that just made me feel so good.
Yep. So high five to the show team.
Absolutely. Great job, guys. And now, I don't think we were 24 hours removed, and now we were already discussing, what we were going to do for the Sebring 12-hour race coming up in March. So you haven't heard the last of endurance racing when it comes to us, and apparently the show team as well. So
Yeah, and for the record, if you weren't able to make Daytona, but you want to make Sebring, come on.
yeah,
We
let us
can
know.
make more. We can make more teams.
We'll make as many podcast dragons as we can.
Yeah. That's why we were joking earlier that we want to take over the whole split
Yeah.
with two people on each team.
Now here's the thing: you have to, if we have Chad doing the first stint, then we'll post his I rating, and everybody's job is to get to their I rating to within a few of that, and then we'll all start the race, and then we'll just have that entire split just taken over by our own drivers.
Yep.
It's like, wait, we win, haha, by default because you can't beat the orange and green. But that was our 24-hour race. I mean, and again, in one of our patented big lies, this show's been going on for a while, Chad, and we've talked about a lot of stuff, and it's been a lot of things to talk to. But you know what? I think we should just stop. I think we should just save everything else for next week, man, because we've been talking for almost 2 hours, and I don't think this show needs to go any further. I don't think there's anything we need to discuss that goes past this. What do you think? I'm calling an audible, man. We need to end this thing.
It's fine with me. We could end it in 5.5 minutes, and then we'd be right at 2 hours.
I don't think that's really a goal. But you know what? Let's talk about our the other experience. We'll talk about the poll question next week. There was a lot to cover with the 24-hour race. We'll have hopefully some new stuff to talk about next week. We've been discussing what we're going to do moving forward with our road racing stuff, and oval racing and all that stuff. But we can talk about all that next week. I don't want the show to be any bigger than it is.
Yeah.
But again, congratulations to everybody who went out and did the 24-hour race, our team and otherwise. Like that, as silly as it seems, what did we do? We competed in a video game, quote unquote, for 24 hours, with other people. But you break it down to
Where else can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you break it down to what we did. I mean, like we all came together as a bunch of teams and did iRacing doesn't provide the means to coordinate. They didn't provide the means to figure out stints, to figure out communication, to do all this stuff. They just said, "Here's your race, you figure it out." And all of these teams, is whatever I said, 4,000 some odd teams. No, wait, 409 teams or whatever it was. Figured out a way to do this. They gave the tool, they gave the canvas, and we all figured out what to do with it. So, that I think is just impressive. I mean, have other sims done, driver swapped kind of thing? I found out that apparently other sims have tried it, but I don't think anybody's done this. I mean, it was, it's just impressive. I mean, it just amazes me, and especially how cool I was on, the whole. I don't know if that's that big of a deal. They're doing driver swaps. If you remember, a year ago and whatnot. Well, I get it. I get it now. I mean, this is the, definitely top 10 gaming moments. And I say gaming, not in a derogatory, form. But I mean, I've been playing video games for, 25, almost, 30 years now. So, and this is definitely the top 10 coolest things I've ever done related to gaming. So, I can't wait to do more.
Yeah, and to take that a step further, thank you to iRacing.
Yeah.
I mean, this, like, when I first heard of it, I was different than Trevor. I was like, this is going to be really cool. And I've never really even been that interested in watching endurance racing, not because I didn't like it or anything, but I never watched it and I'm talking about real life racing. But after doing the Roar and getting my first hands-on experience, I'd watched some of the Masters of Endurance and things like that, but I wasn't a part of it. And after doing the Roar and being a part of it, I watched, I'm not making this up, the most I ever have of the Rolex 24 because of it. And like the most up to this point that I had ever watched of the Rolex 24 was a grand total of 30 minutes. And after doing that Roar a couple weeks ago and then watching the Rolex last week, I actually watched probably 4 or 5 hours of the race in total. And I was like really interested in it because of iRacing. So I say a big thank you to iRacing for the feature. I mean, yeah, they can improve on some of the bugs and everything, and they'll work it all out, but it's an awesome feature. And it's really cool that they gave it to us to experience.
Absolutely. And, I'll tell you, I'm getting a lot more comfortable in road racing. I mean, after all of that time practicing and racing and stuff, I got used to the pedals. That's not a problem anymore. So,
Yeah.
I think I've done more road racing in the last, I don't know, couple weeks here than I have in, I think, the entire time I've been in iRacing. So,
Well, that's good. Make a road racer out of you.
you know what? I am really beginning to enjoy road racing. Like, no exaggeration, no lie. Like, every time I think about doing some more stuff on iRacing, I want to go do more road racing. So, but after our 24-hour podcast here, like I said, that will about do it for this week. A big thanks to all of you out there for listening. Remember, the show is available for download on iTunes and Zune under the podcast section, where we would really appreciate you getting us a review to help us get the word out. The show is also available on YouTube and Twitch at Ratface Productions for myself, and mirrored over on Chad's channel, which is It's Chadlac. Remember, that's changed from the old one, so make sure you update your follows and your likes and whatever it is you do over there on the interwebs. You can check out You can check out the website for information, archives, links, and the polls we mentioned on the show over at iRacingTodayRadio.com. Give us a like on Facebook if you so desire by searching for the iRacing Today radio show over there. And, of course, follow us on Twitter. For myself, it's at iRacing Today, and Chad's over at It's Chadillac.
And of course,